Welcome to Bewitching Bitches.
Get dog wise.
Welcome to Bewitching Bitches Get Dog Wise. In today's episode, we are discussing why dogs bark. And I have a feeling that Ricky might have a little bit of influence in this area, or should we say experience in this area?
I definitely have a lot of experience in this area. My dog Poppy is a Yorkshire Terrier and she is almost 10. So I have almost 10 years experience of incessant barking. And Poppy exhibits a lot of different types of barks. So she has her alert barking. There's somebody at the door, there's somebody walking somewhere near the front of the house. There's something in the garden, a bird just landed on the roof, this kind of bark. There's the bark for food, a bark for attention. She wants me to play with her, she wants me to stop talking and get off the phone, much like a toddler or a child. She wants me to keep moving on the walk and not sit down or talk to somebody passing by who I might have met. She barks in excitement. How else does she bark? She barks in fear. So Poppy is not keen on larger dogs or bouncy dogs. So she will often bark in fear to try and get those dogs to move away from her. So she's got quite a lot of different barks, and I've spent quite a lot of time reading about how to stop these different barks that occur.
What things have you tried?
I have tried a lot of things. So the thing that I am least proud of, that I tried on the recommendation of somebody who I thought knew more than I did, was a vibrating collar, which I will... Oh, wow. Okay, there's a fox screaming in my garden, so you might hear a bit of Poppy's barking in a second. And that will be her alert barking. So I had started dog walking maybe a year before, and Poppy would bark a lot in the car when picking up and dropping off dogs, and when we got to the park, and it was driving me insane. And I spoke to a dog walker who had been a dog walker for a really long time, so she must know more than me. And she used to use there you go, sorry. She used to use Zap collars, electric collars, on the dogs, which my instincts and my gut drew the line at that. I absolutely wouldn't use an electric shock collar. But she suggested that why don't I just use the vibrate then, which I did.
So why don't we, whilst you go and see if you can settle Poppy, I'll go through why we use we don't use those collars and what they do, and see if we can go from there. What do you think?
Good idea.
There we go. So whilst Ricky's going to go and see if she can settle Poppy, or see if she can just relax her a little bit, the electric collars and the vibrating collars are designed to essentially add something in to decrease the likelihood of the behaviour. So whilst Poppy might have been alerting to people at the car, or they might be a little bit unsettled by the movement, or like right now she's barking at a fox or another dog, then ultimately they are there to be able to add something in to decrease the likelihood of the behaviour, which in essence doesn't sound that bad. It is positive punishment, which normally that phrase gets everyone going, oh, I would never want to punish my dog or anything else. But that's just a scientific term for what we're doing. We're adding something in to decrease the likelihood of that behaviour reoccurring. In essence, though, we're still not dealing with the underlying problem. And if your dog is scared, if they're showing you they're doing these behaviours because they're scared of something, then it is the equivalent of telling off a child for showing you that they are scared. You're not dealing with the fact that they're scared. You're not helping them become more comfortable or confident. You're just saying, don't show me that you're scared. And that's not ever really going to help. It's not going to help you address the underlying issue. And you're just punishing them for essentially saying, I'm scared of this. So whilst foxes are predators and prey to our dogs, much like cats, it is important to acknowledge that telling them off for doing those behaviours is not dealing with the fact that they are actually really scared of these things. So the citronella collars, the vibrate collars, the electric collars, whilst lots of people are more aware that these things aren't the best idea or best practice, you do get to the end of your tether and you do kind of just go for it and just try whatever you can. There are alternative sound diversion things that people aren't aware of, which is the shaky cans, the discs on the floor, or the spray cans, which is essentially compressed air that make a sort of noise. All of them are designed to startle your dog out of continuing that behavior. If they are scary enough, they'll stop your dog from doing it, maybe for that moment or maybe permanently. But in reality, you're adding in sound to scare your dog, or you're adding in the vibration or the scent of the citronella, or the should we say stimulus rather than electric shock, but the stimulus from the electric collar to snap your dog out of it. At any point does this sound like we're dealing with the problem? At any point does this sound like we're actually helping them? And it's really important to look at the way to be able to work on this with our dogs too. Were you going to say something, Ricky?
Was in the other room. You're not, by using those things, dealing with the underlying issue, and you're not understanding your dog, and you're not crucially helping your dog. You're just trying to alleviate the thing that's annoying you. And I think it just, I mean, I feel awful that I used it. I didn't use it for very long. It didn't work anyway. And you know, I've tried lots of different things, but adding in fear when actually a lot of Poppy's barking is because of fear in the first place. Not all of it, but some of her barks are from fear, and some are because she's in pain and she wants to keep things away from her. And by trying to mask her barking, all I'm doing is alleviating my discomfort. I'm not helping her at all.
Or also, if it was successful, if you were able to stop her from barking at, say, dogs coming towards her, certain big dogs that she's worried are going to cause her pain, then ultimately we don't have that warning signal, and that can really get very dangerous. That means that she's not feeling comfortable enough to bark, but that dog's still approaching. So the only thing left in her arsenal to protect herself is actually biting. So in those cases, we're making the situation an awful lot worse and putting our dogs in much more dangerous situations too. So at the end of the day, when it comes to barking, we want to look at what the underlying reason is. Is it because that they want your attention? And if it's attention-seeking barking, then how often are you actually providing your dog with reinforcement when they are hanging around you and not barking? So they might be sitting comfortably. They might be sitting and looking at you or trying to get your attention that way. And that doesn't work. So then they escalate up into actively barking at you. Well, that gets your attention. You look at them, you talk to them, you ask them to please be quiet. And it doesn't stop them. It just gets them more attention, and it works. So they're going to do it again and again. And I think this is often what you discuss is, how have you inadvertently reinforced your dog?
Oh my God, with the best of intentions, you know, I've, as I always say, I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm continuing to learn all the time. And sometimes when I've thought that I've been training her not to bark, I've mistakenly been teaching her to bark, because getting that timing right is so key, and actually observing and looking at what you're rewarding in the dog's eyes, it's so key. It's so key. She can bark and I can reward her when she's silent, and if I don't get that exactly right, she can feel that she's been rewarded for barking.
And we only see that afterwards. So the whole idea of whether or not it's positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative reinforcement, or negative punishment, which are all in the quadrant of operant learning, is essentially a way to assess what you've done after. So whether your training, what you added in, increased the likelihood of the behavior or not. Did you add something in that decreased the likelihood of the behavior? Or did you take something away that increased it? Or did you take something away that decreased it? All these things are part of that quadrant. And I would always say that it is just a measurement after the training, essentially. And it's a way to assess what you did. If talking to your dog whilst they barked got them to bark more, then 100% you looking and talking and acting towards your dog got them to do it again and again. Mm-hmm. If grabbing some food and giving them some food that they look at you, they bark, they sit, and then they get food and they do that again, and that whole pattern of behavior happens, great. What have we just reinforced? Looking, barking, sitting.
Yep, I trained Poppy to do that before. I was working with a newly qualified behaviourist, she was trying to help me with Poppy's barking at various things. Oh, she also barks at any animals on the TV, even statues of animals. It's quite remarkable that she can recognize these things, to be honest. But so this lady suggested that I needed to teach Poppy to do an incompatible behavior. So this is something that when you Google how do I stop my dog barking, it will come up quite often. It will be teach your dog to bark and then teach them silence. Doesn't work. Or certainly I didn't get it right. Or teach them an incompatible behavior. Well, I haven't found an incompatible behavior. Stopping barking and sitting worked for a while, but it very quickly became I bark, I sit, I get a treat, I bark, I sit, I get a treat, which actually just increased how much she barked. It just meant that there was a slight reprieve and a sit in between each one.
And they often, when you think about what is incompatible to a dog barking, for some dogs, if they're in a down position, they can't bark as much. So sitting up or standing is easier for them to bark. But very frequently, if the dog is barking for other reasons than what you really are thinking it is, then they'll find a way to bark. So this is quite often when you see dogs, and I think you've mentioned this before with Poppy, that they'll bark even with things in their mouths eventually.
Oh God, yeah, she can bark with a toy, a ball. There was a period where I used to let her carry a ball. She loves a ball. Like a dummy, essentially. Put the ball in your mouth and be quiet, and it just muffled the bark. It didn't stop the bark.
And it does. Essentially, they are just
not tolerable.
It's not dealing with the underlying issue. And
no.
One of the underlying issues that we had was foxes in your garden, and she would bark to alert you to them. But foxes are predators as well as prey to dogs. And so what we looked at was why has she got such an issue with them? She's scared of them. So if we could get her nose down, if we could get her moving in a non-habitual way, so we do this by using Sarah Fisher's animal-centered education free work, which is novel surfaces laid out on the ground with a little bit of food over and in between them, so we're not luring them.
Just magical.
It was brilliant. And I mean, you even got a photograph of her with a fox in the background that she was just happily exploring. And after, rather than looking to the back door to react, she slept.
Went and slept. It was absolutely incredible. I think free work, or whenever I've certainly tried to explain it to somebody, I can't explain the magic of free work, but I've learned so much just from observing Poppy doing free work. So she would rather have a bowl that's higher, not lower. By putting things on different surfaces, you just learn so much. But it also massively helps to relax her.
It's a really good way to be able to engage their nose, engage their body, to be able to do non-habitual movements is really important for dogs rather than getting into this pattern of behavior, and it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. I know I'm getting very sciencey on you, but
you are getting too sciencey. I'm glazing over.
It is really important to look at these things with our dogs to see how we can help them actually deal with the underlying reason. So if they're fearful, then counter conditioning is a really good way to work on those things, which just simply means adding something in that they like paired with the thing that they weren't so happy with at varying distances, and the distance is set by your dog. It's not set by you. Just because you want to work within 2 meters or 5 meters of that thing that scares your dog does not mean your dog can work in that space.
And this is so effective. Like doing that with Poppy has made such a difference to her on walks. Such a difference. She can now be so much closer to dogs without reacting, unless she's in pain. If she's in a pain flare, I will see that barking go back up. But so it's a really, actually, I don't want her to stop that barking because it's an indicator to me that, okay, she can't do as much. I need to make things easier for her right now, because when she gets more barky, generally her pain's in flare. There's something going on that's making her more, she's never going to not bark. But when she goes into days where she's really reactive, she's really alert, she's barking at every noise, every leaf drop, everything, there's something else going on with her.
And that's one of the key things, is that when we say why does your dog bark, there's so many reasons, and ultimately until you look at the underlying reason your dog is barking, you're not going to find an effective way to be able to deal with that. So it is important to address it. It's also really important to make those observations and even keep a diary, because sometimes, and this happens a lot with puppies, they're sleep deprived, so they start barking more for different things because they're so knackered, they can't settle, they can't relax, and they've learned patterns that get your attention essentially. So to summarize, dogs bark for many reasons. They can be alerting you, they can be in pain, they can be essentially doing it to do distance increasing behaviors, they can do it to get your attention, and there's lots of other reasons in between. But the main thing we need to be doing is looking at the underlying reason, finding ways that we can positively reinforce the things we want from them, and listen to your dog. It's so important to listen to your dogs. They really can tell an awful lot more than we can with their sense of smell, with their sight and everything else. So listen to your dog, and if they are barking, look at why they're barking, so then you can look at how to help them instead. Does that help?
Absolutely. And there's one more that I just like to add, which I didn't add in my enormous list of things that Poppy barks about. When I'm stressed, when my stress levels are high, Poppy's stress levels get high. And that's one that I've only really realized recently. I've had, through traumatic periods, through stressful periods, her barking ramps up and she's less settled when I'm less settled. So.
We see it frequently. Dogs will see a change in both our physical and mental health, and they can show that in many, many different ways, but it is a common one that they either ramp up their behaviors that weren't very effective before that you've worked through, like attention-seeking behaviors such as nipping, biting, jumping up, those things, or like Poppy's done, barking. It really does help. So we're going to say goodbye for now, and we will speak to you soon. Take care. We've been Bewitching Bitches.
See you next time.